And now 2012, another British policy we can talk about, their land revenue policies. With reference to Rohit settlement, consider the following statement. 2012, the rent was paid directly by the peasants to the government. The government gave pattas to the Rohits. Then again, lands were surveyed and assessed before being taxed. So first and foremost, we need to understand what is Rohit settlement. Rohits means peasants. Okay, Rohits means peasants. Okay, Rohits means peasants. So before that, there was one policy called as Zamindari settlement, also called as permanent settlement. Okay, here peasants paid taxation to zamindars. Zamindars paid taxation to East India Company. But in Rohit system, what happened? The peasants, that is Rohits, they directly pay tax to East India Company. Okay, so that directly paid tax to East India Company. There's a direct relation between Britishers as well as the peasants. And of course, to fix the taxation, they need to assess the land. They need to give pattas. They need to, because here the owners of the land is Rohits only. But here the owners of the land was zamindars. But here the owners of the land was Rohits only. So that is the reason you have to recognize their ownership. For that, you need to survey and assess all these are concepts. Okay, so that is the concept of Rohit settlement. Which of the statements above is correct? One only, 1 and 2, 1, 2, 3, and none. Answer should be C. All of them are correct. All of them are correct over there. Okay. Now we'll understand what is Rohit in detail. So before getting into that one, we'll understand 3 other settlements of Britishers. That is Ijardari settlement. Okay. In brief, 1772 by Warren Hastings. Okay. Then again, Zamindari settlement in 1793 by Cornwallis. Okay. And then again, Mahalwari settlement. So around 1830s by William Bentinck and Holt Mackenzie. Okay. Now here Ijardars are the one who got auction right. Okay, auctioned right of revenue collection. It means Ijardar got the right to collect the revenue through auctioning. And who conducted this auctioning of revenue collection right? East India Company. The highest bidder got the revenue collection right, and they would collect from the peasants whatever the auctioned amount. They say one person is auctioned for 500 rupees per annum, just hypothetically. That 500 rupees should be paid for East India Company, and the Ijardars were free to collect even 1000 rupees from the peasants. And that was a disaster for recipe, a recipe for disaster. So many peasants' livelihood lost. Okay, it's also called as revenue farming method. Revenue farming methods. Revenue farming method. Okay. But this auctioning amount used to change every year. What if the auctioners change the amount, intentionally kept it low? Because East India Company cannot toss beyond the auctioned amount. What if they bid only 100 rupees per annum? They will receive only 100 rupees, but these auctioners can get more. What if they bid too much of amount, which cannot be realized from the peasants? There was ruining of agriculture was happening. So they wanted to fix the revenue, and they brought the system called as Zamindari system. And this was, Ijardari was brought by Warren Hastings. This was brought by Cornwallis in 1793. So this was settlement with this zamindars. It means peasants will pay taxation to zamindars. Zamindars will become the owners of this peasants' land also. Previously, when we talked about Jagirdar system as well as Zamindar system, Zamindars were just a revenue collectors. They were not the owners of the land from which they were collecting the revenue. But right now, what Britishers did, they recognized the Zamindars as the owners of this peasants' land also. And how much revenue to be collected from peasants to Zamindars, that was not stated. Now, Zamindars exploited peasants. And also, what is the revenue paid by Zamindars to East India Company? And that was permanent. That was fixed. There is no changes. Every year they have to pay that revenue. That is the reason Zamindar system also called as permanent settlement. Even if the crops fail, they have to pay that revenue. Then Mahalwari system. Mahal means village. So Britishers collect revenue from village as a whole. The village head, Lambardar, he will collect land revenue from all the villagers. So entire village land was considered as kind of a community land. So all of them would together cultivate that one, and then they will pay the revenue to the head of the village. The head of the village will pay to East India Company. So it is a revenue settlement with the village. It's a revenue settlement with the zamindars. Now Rohitwari settlement is the settlement with the Rohits. Okay. And now zamindari area was around 19% of British India, and Mahalwari area was under 30% of British India because it was abolished after the zamindari system came into being. Okay, so rest 51% of the area was under Rohitwari. Rest 51% was under Rohitwari. So the largest settlement area, largest land revenue settlement policy of Britishers was Rohitwari settlement. Okay, so that is Izardari system, Zamindari system, and Mahalwari system. Okay, Izardari was auctioning of the revenue rate, that is fixing of the revenues with the zamindar, that is Zamindari system. Zamindars would be recognized as owners of the land. All these peasants became tenants at will. They lost their land. And Mahalwaris, okay, that is revenue with the Mahal or settlement with the Mahal, but revenue rate was quite high, 80%, 90% of revenue was there. Okay. So now Rohitwari settlement, we'll discuss that one. Now one more question was also asked, introduction of Rohitwari settlement in India. Okay. Introduction of, that is Thomas Munro and Alexander Reed. Cornwallis, we know, he introduced Zamindari settlement. Okay. Alexander Reed, then Thomas Munro, these are the two persons who are associated with Rohitwari settlement. Okay, which will be the answer? 1 only, 1 and 3, 2 and 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, you can easily eliminate first statement, even if you don't know. So which is left? 2 and 3. 2 and 3 is left. Alexander Reed and Thomas. If you know about only Zamindari settlement, who introduced that one, could have easily eliminated A, B and D. 2017. 2012 it was asked about, 2017 it was asked about. Now, what is Rohitwari settlement? In detail, 1820, Rohit means peasants, Thomas Munro and Alexander Reed. Introduced in Madras, Assam, Coorg, Bombay, and Zamindari settlement was introduced in Bengal majorly. Then again Mahalwari settlement was introduced in northwest provinces, Agra, Punjab, this area. It's covering 51% of British India, Zamindari around 19% of British India. Okay, and again Mahalwari was under 30% of British India. Okay, so different rates in dry land around 50% and wetlands around 60% of the land revenue. And no zamindars in between, directly with the Rohits. Zamindar, there is a middleman. Zamindars, you need to provide some kind of commissions. Okay, that is 10 by 11. Out of the 11 parts of revenue, 10 parts should be given to East India Company, and 1 part would remain with the zamindars. 1 by 11 will remain with the zamindars. So they had to provide some kind of commissions to zamindars, East India Company. So in Rohitwari system, there will be no zamindars in between. So directly with the Rohits. And Rohits sometimes also called as Miras. Okay, Miras also in local regions. And this system was influenced by one of the Scottish utilitarian ideas, Scottish Enlightenment. And this idea talks about there will be no middleman concept between government and the land, between government and the production function. That is, production function is agriculture, we can talk about. So this is influenced by this particular philosophical, or we can say some kind of intellectual revolt, or we can say intellectual idea which was there in Scotland. Scottish Enlightenment is also called as utilitarian ideas. Okay, then again Rohits are the owners of the land. They were given patas. They can sell, mortgage their land. Okay, at the same time they will not be evicted of the land as long as they are paying the land revenue. Okay, high rates, but it led to Deccan riots in 1875 because it was led to a lot of livelihood losing of livelihood of peasants. Okay, this is Rohitwari settlement, and that led to migration to other areas, non-Rohitwari settlements. Okay, and now education, English education, we are coming into which of the following led to the introduction of English education in India? Charter Act of 1813, General Committee of Public Instruction, and Orientalist and Anglicist controversy. You know, Charter Act of 1813 provided 1 lakh rupees for education, which was introduced in 1823. Finally, English education was introduced in 1835. To introduce which kind of education, there was a controversy. To settle that controversy, this committee was established. And this committee had 2 kind of members, that is Orientalist and Anglicist. And the head of this committee was Macaulay. Of course, all these 3 definitely played a role. 1 and 2, 2 only, 1 and 3, and 1, 2, 3. Now the answer is D, 1, 2, 3. Okay, we'll talk about English education as a whole. We'll talk about Macaulay's committee. We'll talk about Charter Act of 1813. That all the acts, questions are last over there. Okay, so that is all these 1773 Act, 1784 Act, 1773 Act. Okay, then again, sorry, 1813, 1833, 1853, 1861, 1892, then 1909, 1919, 1935, 1947. So all these acts I think we covered in last year rapid revision. You can just go and check with that one because it is very fairly easy to understand. Okay, so now we'll come to this particular one more question regarding Wood's dispatch with respect to education only. Look at one more question, 2018. So the following statements are true. Grants in aid system was introduced. Establishment of universities was recommended. English as a medium of instruction at all levels of education was recommended. Not at all levels of education. This is absolute statement. Universities, yes. Early universities, we can talk about Bengal, Madras, okay, then again Bombay. Grants in aid, yes. If you look at the recommendation of Charles Wood, it will definitely be there. Okay. At to eliminate 3, that is whichever is left, yeah. Whichever is left is yeah, 1 and 2. Okay. And now look at introduction of English education. So that is rupees 1 lakh in 1813. It released in 1823, but there was a controversy on how to spend this money, whether to spend on English education, whether to spend on Indian education, whether it should be in vernacular medium or should be in Indian medium or in English medium. So there was committee was set up by Governor General Edward Hastings, not Warren Hastings. Warren Hastings was different, and that committee was called as Committee of Public Instruction 1823, and Thomas Macaulay was the chairman, and 10 members were there, and there was a members had different opinions about the type of education, and the formation of 2 groups in the committee. And what is the 2 groups? Anglicists as well as Orientalists. Anglicists as well as Orientalists. Now, what is Anglicist? They believed in English education, in English medium, modern Western education, English type of education, English medium, okay, led by Charles Trevelyan and Elphinstone. Then Orientalists, they believed in traditional Indian learning in vernacular mediums. In vernacular language means local languages, led by S.T. Prinsep and Heman Wilson. Okay, so this is the 2 membership in the committee, Anglicists as well as Orientalists. Okay, and controversy held in 1835 because Macaulay's minute, the report given by the chairman Macaulay, and he said that when resources of 1 lakh rupees per year that should be sent on teaching Western sciences in English medium, in Western literature, okay, in English medium. Okay, so why? Argued that one, that is Indian languages are backward, not quite developed. Okay, and he also wanted to make Indians the consumers of British goods, and also wanted to make Indians loyal to British interests. How? By giving them English education, making them acquire Western taste, ultimately consume Western goods, because Industrial Revolution was happening in Britain from the middle of the 18th century itself only, and now we are in 19th century beginning. So they wanted to make Indians the more consumers of British goods. We want to create a pool of Indians who would be able to serve British interests and be loyal to them. And this famous statement, you want to create a class of Indians that is Indians, that is Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, opinion, morals and intellect. Okay, so that is the statement made by Macaulay. And in this theory, this kind of Macaulay's minute also called as downward infiltration theory. So according to this theory, they are not going to open up schools for mass education, not for all the people. They are going to open up schools only for upper classes, and they believe that when the upper classes is going to teach these Western sciences to the local people. Okay, so that is open few schools for upper and middle classes, and they expected they will expand among the masses. They expected that these upper classes are going to teach English language as well as the Western sciences to local people. So that was downward infiltration theory. Now schools education started, but there was one more committee, that is Wood's Dispatch 1854. Charles Wood, he was the president of the Board of Control, which was established in 1794 Act. Okay, he discarded downward infiltration theory, that he said that when government should take up the measures for mass education, that is you have to establish primary schools for English education over there. Okay, and whereas vernacular education also. He gave new recommendations. What are the new recommendations? These new recommendations are called as Magna Carta of Indian Education. Okay, so what are these new education? Look at that one. They are relevant even today also. First and foremost, ask the government to assume responsibility, because Macaulay's committee said that one, that is people will assume responsibility, the upper caste will assume responsibility. He said that one, that is education department should be there in all provinces so that the local governments will have more role in establishing educational institution. And then he said that one, there should be a government school in every district also. Government school in every district. Then again, universities were established. He recommended universities should be established in Bengal, Bombay and Madras. Bengal, Bombay and Madras. Okay. Then again, women education should be given importance. Then vernacular languages at the lower levels, Anglo vernacular at the higher schools, and English education at the colleges. So transferring from one level to the other level. So all languages are getting equal respect and importance. So vernacular means local languages at primary level. At upper primary and higher schools, Anglo vernacular mix of English as well as vernacular language, and English, completely English in colleges. Fair enough. Then again, secular education, but what the statement had given, that is the committee has recommended, English education at all levels. And education should be secular, and at the same time, in this education, not just syllabus should be taught, but also vocational training should be given. The training for industry skills, agricultural skills and trade skills should be given for students. Again, very good. And again, teachers training should be there, and there should be grants in need for private efforts. If any private organization will come in, like kind of you can say NGO or private efforts, and these private efforts should be supported by the government by giving them grants and aid to open more and more schools. So these are the recommendations given by Charles Wood Dispatch. Okay, Charles Wood was of the president of Board of Control.